Now, why would a nice guy like me be making a prophecy about a cyclone as a message against the Australian government? And I am a pretty nice, sort of easygoing guy, unless you do something to rile me up. And I'm afraid the Australian government has done plenty to rile me up over the last couple of years. A, they cut me off from my partner and my best friend. B, when it comes to Centrelink, I need some assistance because I live quite a distance from where I work. I've got a 1 hour commute each way, so I do need some help in that way. And I just find they've been so unhelpful to me because I told immigration and I have told Centrelink. When I was young, I was bullied really badly. When I was 12, it caused me a lot of mental issues from which I am still not fully recovered. And when I was 13, I was the victim of basically a stranger abduction in a park. I don't even remember what happened. And I don't know why the government is so determined to ignore me, not ignore me, but just diminish what happened to me and say, listen, it's not an issue. I don't know what it is with them, but the Australian federal government seems to be utterly determined to try and treat me like I'm a problem, when really I go to work, I do my job, I work in after school care, I enjoy my job, I do what I can do, but I can't drive to work 5 days a week. When I was doing that, I was a danger to other people because I was getting very sleepy behind the wheel. And that was the case for quite a while, and I was still going to work because Centrelink were telling me I had minimum hours I had to meet, and I had to go to meetings and like attend meetings and all the other hoops they make you jump through to get the assistance. And even when I was studying full-time and trying to do as many work shifts as I could, they did not make it any easier for me. And I just feel the system is very unhelpful, and worse than that. And I'm about to play the news because there's a few stories in here that relate to everything I'm saying. Worse than that, they ignore, like I had to go to my doctor and I said, listen, the problem with me is when it comes to driving. Driving's what messes with me if I overdo it. The driving is the problem for me when it comes to my mental issues, when it comes to everything really. Driving's my trigger. Too much driving and I lose it. And the doctor can only say, there's nothing I can do about that. It's about your capacity to work. Either you're fit to work or you're not. And there's nothing in the middle. For someone like me who can work up to a point, there's nothing. And I just get harassed and put through the mill by the system. I can only do what I can do and do it safely. And I've had enough of it, so I'm making these videos, and it's got to the point I'm making, on top of all the harassment from Centrelink that I've copped over the years, and lately it's been okay, but I'm not expecting it to stay okay. On top of that, the horrible treatment I received from Immigration and Border Protection, who ripped me off $7,000 on a partner visa. That's just the fee. They rejected my application, and they did not offer any kind of refund. They didn't even notify me of the decision. I spent close to $2,000, believe it or not, on photocopying and scanning for an application that they just completely did not acknowledge the relationship. Probably because my partner is of colour and it's a same-sex relationship. If you know a lot about Peter Dutton, you'll know what I mean. He's the Minister for Immigration and Border Protection. Listen to the news in relation to everything I've just said, and just keep it in the back of your mind.
Yes to same-sex marriage. What about coal-fired power, the refugee intake, euthanasia, major drug reform, cutting private school funding, Indigenous recognition, female gender quotas? Have your say. Politics HQ is back only on Sky News Live.
Ecuador has granted citizenship to WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange.
An important victory.
Peter Dutton stepped up his attack on Daniel Andrews.
If he can't rectify the problem, he needs to consider his own position.
The president setting off the firestorm using an expletive during talks about immigration.
A whole host of innovations unveiled at this year's CES.
What's in open for you?
For unrivaled live coverage in 2018, this is Sky News, Australia's news channel. Live, this is Summer Edition.
Friends and family of Dolly Everett gather in the Northern Territory town of Katherine to farewell the 14-year-old.
Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton attacks sentencing in Victoria, saying the government has appointed civil libertarian judges.
Government overpays almost $3 billion in welfare payments to Australians who are rorting the system.
And Jessica Falcott's life support turned off following the Boxing Day crash that killed her family.
And in weather, the low-intensity heatwave continues across Queensland and tropical cyclone Joyce is expected to weaken. We'll have all the details on Sky News Weather Channel 603.
Hello again, great to be with you this Friday night. I'm Aaron Young, along with Caroline Marcus. Coming up later this hour, we'll be talking to Simon Breeny from the IPA. He comes in to chat about crime in Victoria. We can tell you he was actually attacked this week on the streets of Melbourne. He's going to tell us a story about what has happened there, Caroline, so a big show ahead.
Yeah, it sure is, Aaron. And as always, we want to hear your thoughts at home tonight. You can keep it coming. Email us at yoursay@skynews.com.au or tweet us using our hashtag Summer Edition. But first, our top story.
And friends and family of Dolly Everett have gathered in the Northern Territory town of Katherine to farewell the 14-year-old girl. The teen took her own life last week after being relentlessly bullied on social media. Sky News Northern Australia correspondent Matt Cunningham has a story for us.
A bunch of white balloons released to remember a life taken far too soon. They followed a sea of blue that descended on the Casuarina Street Primary School in Katherine to say goodbye to a young girl whose life was cut tragically short. It was the favourite colour of 14-year-old Amy Everett, the bright girl with the beaming smile known to her family as Dolly.
I remember I was running a little bit late for the birth, as you do in our world. Screamed in sideways and there she was, and Dolly and Kate just looked down and said she's just like a perfect little China doll. And, Dolly just stuck.
It was Dolly's famous smile that helped make her the face of a Kubra Hats when she was just 6 years old. But 8 years later, she took her own life, the victim, her family says, of relentless online bullying.
To all the parents, please check your children, talk to them. Talk to them about their relationships, talk to them about their bullying, whichever way it might be happening. Please just talk to your children and anybody else. And remember, speak even if your voice shakes.
Few saw the tragedy that was coming until it was too late. Friends were left to wonder if they could have done more.
I think everyone who knew Dolly, when they found out what happened, they would have asked themselves, was there something I could do? Did I miss something? Did I not see something? Did I say something wrong? Has she taken something I've said in the wrong way? It's very hard for all of us. I know we've all asked ourselves those questions.
Tributes flowed from across the country and around the world. Among those to offer their condolences, Hollywood movie star Bette Midler and the Australian Prime Minister. Dolly's family welcomed Malcolm Turnbull's commitment to stamp out cyberbullying.
I'm not a politician by any means. I don't even really know which party's in power right now. So, but mate, we got to talk about it. We've got to educate the little kids. We've got to educate the teachers. Everybody's somebody's daughter, somebody's son.
It was here at Katherine's Casuarina Street Primary School that Dolly began her education just 9 years ago. And in this same place today, her family launched Dolly's Dream, a foundation they hope will help put an end to youth suicide.
Through this trust, we hope to raise awareness around bullying, anxiety, depression, and obviously youth suicide. It won't bring our Dolly back, but it may just prevent the loss of another young life.
Matt Cunningham, Sky News, Catherine.
She was the sole survivor of a fiery Boxing Day crash, but a day after her parents and sister were laid to rest, actress Jessica Falcolt has been taken off life support. The driver responsible had a despicable record and has now wiped out an entire family and himself.
Extended family knew Jessica Falcolt's life support would have to be switched off one day. Jolting, but inevitable.
Being such a nice family and happening to them, it really hurts.
A former cop believes the crash that will have killed Vivian, Lars, Annabelle and Home and Away star Jessica was inevitable too.
I would have seen him arrested myself at least probably half a dozen times.
He's talking about Craig Whittle, the man who killed the Falcolts and himself. Literally an accident waiting to happen.
Astounded, angry, frustrated that all the work that I had done, like another police have done over the years, had basically come to nothing.
A career criminal, says Andrew, and a driving menace who should have been in jail.
The sentences are there. If the judges like seem to go lightly.
Craig Whittle's criminal record includes 4 jail sentences and a 9-year driving ban. It didn't stop him. At least 10 convictions for driving while disqualified. Regardless, he was given his licence back a year ago, returning from a methadone clinic on P-plates when he caused the crash. He was a prolific offender with more than 60 criminal convictions. Among them, break-and-enter offences to fund his drug habit, notorious for his calling card, defecating in victims' homes. Still grieving his father, Shane Whittle faced court himself yesterday for reckless driving.
As Jessica Falcolt lay here seeing out the final hours of her young, short life, victim advocates were telling 7 News an inquiry is needed to examine outdated court guidelines for drivers who kill. Currently, the recommendation for mid-range offences is 2 years.
The maximum is 14 years.
Ridiculously light sentences, and so don't send that clear message that people have to be penalised and heavily.
We are going to be looking at the circumstances around this case.
Almost $3 billion in welfare payments have been overpaid by the government due to fraud as well as errors. The Human Services Department overpaid recipients $2.84 billion. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Through fraud or error last financial year, 2.4 million people were given more money than they were entitled to, but less than half of that was recovered. Debt collectors recovered $126 million through deductions from ongoing payments, while the federal government probed just 1 in 10 reports of cheating. Only 709 people were prosecuted. Human Services Minister Michael Keenan says the coalition will continue working to increase recovery rates.
Our compliance efforts are working. Several years ago we collected $1.2 billion. Last financial year we collected $1.6 billion, and we're going to continue to find new ways, particularly through data matching, for example, to make sure that we can recoup money that has been overpaid through the welfare system, because all Australians can expect that that system will operate with 100% integrity. If you've inadvertently made a mistake, then we will work with you to get that money repaid, but you will need to repay it. But if you've been defrauding the system, then you can expect that we will come down on you like a ton of bricks.
The Labor on the other side says the report shows the government's incompetent when it comes to the management of Centrelink.
If someone cheats the system, they should be forced to repay the money back. We've got no problem with that. But when you look at 709 prosecutions out of a total of 5.1 million Australians who receive payments, this is not the biggest problem that this government is facing. This is a government that is incompetent in terms of its technology, incompetent in terms of its handling of its workforce, incompetent when it comes to running a government department. They are not fit for government.
So, Caroline, interesting to see Labor there, Doug Cameron, taking this line. The Human Services Department, we've been told, only recovered $1.6 billion in overpayments. Also, we know there's been a huge number of different ministers, a merry-go-round of ministers, 4 in the last 4 years. And, of course, the government last year, remember we were talking on the morning shift last year, that the government was copping criticism for accidentally sending those robo-debt recovery notices to 20,000 people. That was a huge issue at the time, not a good look for them. But this figure as well, I'm keen to know your thoughts, just 1 in 10 prosecuted.
Well, the minister, when he was giving his doorstop earlier, Michael Keenan, said that a lot of them had come out of error. So when the government contacted these people and explained there'd been some sort of error, they'd been overpaid, it could be sorted out. That was the government's justification. I don't necessarily think that that's excusable. I think there's probably more investigation needed, that more people need to be penalised if such huge rorting of the system happens. I think Labor's messaging is really confused too. On the one hand, they're criticising the government for having lost control and all these billions being overpaid to people, but on the other hand saying, oh, well, it's only 702 people that are prosecuted, this isn't a big deal, so which one is it? It's a little bit confused. I think if we're going to have a strong welfare system, if we're going to really help people who do need help, we need to make sure it's rigorous and that people aren't defrauding the system, and that's what appears to be happening.
Yeah, a huge amount of money. We are keen to know your thoughts on the issue. Tweet us using the hashtag Summer Edition. We'll be reading some of them out later on in the program. Moving on, though, the Education Minister says today's national report into outcomes for university students reveals a mixed bag when it comes to graduate employment. The 2017 Graduate Outcome Survey shows a rise of almost 1 percentage point in the full-time employment rate, up to 71.8% from 2016. That number, though, leaves almost 30% of students.
So yeah, that sort of goes to what I was saying. They play politics, both major parties, Labor and Liberal. They just play politics with everything, which is really unhelpful. And in my situation, I just need some support. I don't need to be on the dole, but I do need some supplementation of the wage that I am capable of earning. But they just don't allow that simple thing to happen. They just have to, they seem to have to bully people. That's how I feel. I feel like the government just enjoys bullying and harassing. And I've got good reasons for saying that. What immigration did was despicable. And it was purely because of immigration's actions that I became suicidal in 2015. And it was purely because of that I ended up in the psychiatric unit. All I needed was antidepressants to help me guard against suicide at the time. That's all I needed. And they forced me into a psychiatric unit and forced me to stay there for, I think it was around 25 days. And I was told when I was in there that the cost of being in that place is $6,000, the cost to the taxpayer is $6,000 per day. Now $6,000 per day times 25. I'm just adding it up now on the calculator. I hate to tell you this, it's $150,000 of taxpayers' money was used to pay for me to be in a psychiatric unit for a month, when all I needed, and I can tell you this for a fact, all I needed at most was to be in there for 2 days. It's like, I know the pharmaceutical companies who make all the different drugs that they virtually experiment on people in psychiatric units. The patients are treated, who are not called patients these days, they're called consumers, are almost treated like guinea pigs. And I don't doubt that the psychiatrists get massive kickbacks from the pharmaceutical companies for prescribing maximum amounts of these medications. I did not need anything more than an antidepressant. That's all I needed. And they forced me, against my will, to take a very expensive antipsychotic, which did not help me at all. It actually, well, the whole experience, being on a medication that did not suit me, being forced to take it, being threatened with injections if I didn't take it, The whole thing was just so traumatizing that it put me off work for the next 6 months. Not that I couldn't work, but I had no choice. It was either get a medical certificate and don't work, or it was work the required hours, which it was Scott Morrison then was the minister, and the hours I had to work was something like 30 hours a fortnight, and I couldn't do it. So I couldn't work at all. So instead of needing, you know, a couple $100 a fortnight from Centrelink, I'm getting the full, you know, the full payment. So the cost to taxpayer, when you add it all up, the tablets that I was prescribed that I didn't need, didn't want, and that were actually detrimental to me, were well over $100 a packet, and I wasn't paying for them because I was on a healthcare card. Taxpayers paying for them. So pharmaceutical companies are profiteering, psychiatrists are profiteering. The system's rotted. It's just rotted right through. And the psychiatric unit I'm talking about is the Chisholm Ross Psychiatric Unit in Goulburn, New South Wales. Same state where that car accident happened, not Victoria, not the place that Peter Dutton is saying there's a huge problem with judges not giving harsh enough sentences to juvenile offenders or whatever. They play politics. They play politics with people's lives. And I think what really shows the heartlessness of the federal government of Australia is what I found out today. And that is Australia's government has continued business as usual with the government of Myanmar. And when I say the government of Myanmar, I'm talking about the military of Myanmar, who have recently killed thousands of their own citizens in ways that defy belief. And I'm talking, they've thrown babies, little toddlers, little baby boys into fires to let them burn alive. Australia's government has continued business as usual with the Myanmar military. Senior military figures from Myanmar are welcome to get a visa to come to Australia. Nothing to stop them. Australia is continuing to not only cooperate with Myanmar, they are continuing to work with and train the Myanmar military. I got a fair taste of what Australia is really like in the Chisholm Ross Psychiatric Unit. I didn't even bother appealing the fact that I was forced to stay in there, because I could see by the way other consumers were being treated, which really riled me up as well. I could see there was no point. I did not have the feeling of being in a place where I was being helped by doctors. I had the feeling of being in a place that was more like a jail, and that I was being punished for being a pain in the butt to the government. That it was like a backup to the prison system. I hadn't done much wrong. All I had done was go to the police and say I thought there was going to be a bushfire on a particular date. Something like this, except instead of a cyclone, it was a bushfire. And a couple of my friends said, don't do it. Don't go near the police. They'll think you're going to go out and light a fire. They didn't think that, but they thought I was mentally ill. Which I was, because I had been cut off from my partner. I don't think having beliefs about synchronicity or about meaningful coincidence or whatever makes you mentally ill. There's a lot of people in the world who are Christians, who are Hindus, who are Muslims, who are Buddhists, some of whom are nice people, some of whom are like in Myanmar, murderers, torturers, in the Myanmar military. And nobody, well you don't hear too many people suggesting that everyone who believes in God should be locked up. Everyone who believes in Jesus needs psychiatric medication. I'm sure there are psychiatrists who do believe that. But you don't hear that advocated. Have I made enough points about the hypocrisy of the Australian government at a federal level and what it's doing to people? I hope so. Because I think I'm pretty good at my job, working with kids. I get along well with kids. Kids respond well to me. They like me. And I think I actually give the money I do get from the taxpayer normally over a fortnight that supplements my wage. I think I give that back to the community in what I do for the kids at my work, in the relationships I have with them, and what they get from me. Because I genuinely do like kids. I enjoy working with kids, and I don't look down on kids. I don't feel like I'm in a position of authority or power over children. I am actually on the same level as the kids that I work with. Naturally, that's how I am. And kids really respond to that. Yeah. Anyway. The government's not helpful. Far from helpful. What they've done to me is atrocious. And I doubt that, well, I've seen for myself. I've seen the way they treat other people. I saw what they do to people in the psychiatric unit at Chisholm Ross in Goulburn. I saw a young guy have his knee dislocated. Yes, he was a pain in the butt, but you don't hold someone down with so much force that you dislocate their knee. That's what happened to him. And it just seems to me that anyone in the mental health system in New South Wales, and I don't know about other states, but in New South Wales, once you're in the mental health system, you've got no rights. As a civil, you've got no rights as a citizen. You've got no ability to get out of that place. Because if they have people that can advocate on your behalf, you go to court, you can get legal aid. They have the same kind of thing. But the legal aid officers in Chisholm Ross Psych Unit, they just side up with the psychiatrists and agree with them. And I saw that enough with other people in there that I didn't even bother. I just thought, I'm just going to do what I'm told until I get out of here. As I said, at a cost of 150 grand to the Australian taxpayer. It's pretty disgusting. Because all it did was traumatise me. And yeah, it's probably the most traumatising thing that's happened to me definitely in the last 10 years. Horrible. So yeah, you can talk about crime, you can talk about the problems with crime in Melbourne. There is obviously some problems with crime happening in Melbourne. But to racially stigmatise and stereotype people from, southern Sudan or from Africa, as Donald Trump did today, why are we letting people in from certain countries? It's just not the way to go. It's just horrible. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there.